Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Conversations with Coaches podcast slash lessons colon dot lessons part, whatever part this is. Anyway, this is this recurring series of basically just some of the cool, awesome, stick with you for a while insights that I've gotten from a bunch of the coaches I've spoken with over the last year and a half or so. It's just fantastic. Like I said, I've explained this many times, but I always feel like I should every once in a while refresh that explanation. I just get so much good stuff from the coaches I get to talk to, just in the telling of their own stories, how they became a coach, what their business and their practice is like today, who they coach and how they coach them, and just in the natural course of the conversations. If you listen to any of the episodes, you understand just such gold comes out. And to the surprise of no one, many of these coaches, in fact, pretty much all of them, have a way with words. And so I just like to spin some of them back out in various forms. Sometimes it's just something that gets, I'll hear it in different ways, 4 or 5 or 6 or a dozen different times over the course of a couple months. And it'll just end up kind of getting into my head in a certain way. And I'll noodle on it. I'll write it up on my whiteboard and it'll just kind of follow me through my day and my week and my month and my year and maybe stay with me forever. Who knows? But I like to spin them back out and share them. And today I have something that kind of came up again, but for the first time in a little while in a particular way, in a conversation I was recording yesterday with a coach that I'm very pleased to introduce you to in a few weeks when her episode airs. We were talking about, among other things, the nature of competition and how oftentimes we find ourselves thinking of competition as like a zero-sum game where it's like, we're, competing against X, Y, and Z person in our niche. And this is, this can be applied generally, of course, but also speaking fairly specifically, maybe you're competing with people in your department, other companies in your industry, who knows what it could be. But there's a temptation to only think of competition in that sort of zero-sum lens, when there's winners, there's losers, there's a finite pie, and to also have that understanding of competition leak into competitive analysis. Now, I'm speaking a little bit as a marketer here, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but still, I want to contextualize it a little bit. Competitive analysis is a really, really important aspect of business and marketing, full stop. Knowing what the people who are in your business are doing, what's working for them, what's not working for them, is a really important part of understanding what's going to work and not work for you, and maybe what you can and should be doing right now and maybe going forward. It's really interesting. A lot of fascinating details can come out of this. But this coach I spoke to, I was going to say, I'll save her name for when her episode airs. But she said something interesting, and she was speaking extemporaneously about this subject, and a phrase popped into my head as she was talking that I was getting excited to say myself. I was like, oh, this reminds me of this analogy I like to use a lot. And as she was closing out her thoughts, she said the exact words that were in my head, which, again, unsurprising, but still delightful when a coach is like, you're on the same wavelength. They know what you're thinking. They know what they're saying. They know what they're thinking. They know the right words at the right time. It's kind of perfect. But we were talking about this idea of competition and competitive analysis and what looking at and engaging with competition can really do. And she was comparing and contrasting it with how in coaching, a lot of times what you're trying to do is to go to the limit, reach for the stars. You're basically trying to, raise the ceiling on what you could do to go places you've maybe only dreamed about before, but you're beginning to make your dreams a reality. It's really like, seems like pie in the sky stuff, but it's like, this is what coaches do professionally and they're good at it. But then we started talking about, and she mentioned how competitive analysis and competition, what it really does is it raises the floor. It allows you to understand what the foundation is, what the lowest level, like the minimum viable, whatever happens to be, is. And I really, really gravitated towards looking at that facet of competition, and having an understanding of both its importance and its limitations. And I really, really liked that, where, it's pretty much right there. It's pretty simple. What understanding the competition can help you to do is to understand the things that you should be doing, maybe everyone should be doing, maybe how you can differentiate. And it does raise the floor, brings you up to a certain level where it's like, okay, I'm going to be at least this good at X, Y, Z when I'm going around doing this thing. But that doesn't really raise your ceiling. And there are other things that coaches talk about, we'll talk about in later episodes, certainly, actually, we've talked about them in past episodes, where you can really raise the roof and reach for the stars and like really attain your dreams. But I really, really, really liked thinking of competitive analysis as a floor raiser, not a roof raiser. And understanding it in that way, allowing me to use it better, to understand the nature of the information and where it's going to be most valuable. I'm still playing with, noodling around with, like I'm in my basement with a guitar trying to pick out some chords. I'm noodling around with this idea, thinking about how it applies to my professional life, the work I do for my clients, for our clients, and also just in my personal life. So this one's a little bit like 3/4 baked. It's been in the oven for a little while. I know maybe the dough is rising. I'm going to stop mixing my analogies at this point, but I want to share it with you, and share what my thoughts were at the present moment regarding competition, of course, and competitive analysis, and raising floors versus raising ceilings, and how that all kind of interacts. There was one thought I did want to leave you with, though, and this is something that's been with me for a very long time. It's an old, I was going to say it's an old quote. It's actually, to my knowledge, it's more or less a paraphrase of a Bible verse. But it's essentially, it means a number of things. It's mostly how we make each other better. But I won't say the whole quote, but it's as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. I forget where it's at. I'm sure you can Google as iron sharpens iron, and I'm certain it'll come up in, some meaningful way. But I've always loved that. I've actually had that in my head, in my heart for a very long time in my life. And it always just was a good reminder of just the way that we can, as human beings, we can make each other better, sharper, more full to our purpose, iron sharpening iron. I like that, sharpening meaning, a blade, something that can cut, something that can have a purpose, can act. And I've always really, really, really liked that. And thinking about that in terms of competition, how it's not a zero-sum game. Obviously there are winners and losers to everything in certain aspects, defined in certain ways. But really, it's just your competitors. And I find this to be so true in the coaching industry, especially, but more and more true with the internal workings of companies that seem to be either headed the right direction or already doing some of their best work. And that it's the competition actually helps everyone to improve, to get better, and not in some like negatively defining way where there's a winner and then a collection of losers, or it's not even defined that way. It's just defined as this sharpening where everyone is spurring each other on, in ways both direct and indirect, intentional and unintentional, but by design, by the very structure of the way the company, the organization, the team, the family is working. So just wanted to toss it in there at the end as well. Like I said, there's some ideas here that they're noodling with each other, playing in a band. I don't know. I guess now I have got this image of a jam band in my head, which is apparently nowhere you'd like to be right now, but I wanted to share it with you. And I say this sometimes, but I should say it every time. Let me know what you think about this. Like I'm very curious to have conversations like this. A lot of times we'll start to touch on ideas like this during the podcasts. And because we try to keep things so short, we often get right up to the cusp of really diving into like the deep end of conversations like this. And then we cut things short. I think it's the smart move. I think it keeps things succinct and accessible and still really valuable. But man, am I tempted sometimes to deep dive on stuff like this and really go exploring. So let me know what you think. Shoot me a message if you want to come back on the pod for like a part 2 or a part 3 in some of your cases and chat about something like this or this in particular. Let me know, because I'll still be down here in the basement of my mind noodling on a bass guitar trying to find those chords. Until then, I'll talk to you soon.